funny for me to think about now, but I remember as a beginner when I was starting to dive into all this bead weaving stuff, there were certain things that scared me about it. And one of the things that I found very intimidating was having to start a new thread, because I love the people who come up to me and I'll have this big, necklace or something on, and they'll be like, "Oh, did you do all that with one thread?" Oh, we only wish we could do that with one thread, don't we? The truth of the matter is you have to use, a length of thread that's manageable, and then you have to come to terms with the fact that you're going to have to add thread. And it's not anybody's favorite part of doing things, because there is the potential of getting a little knot in your thread as you work this. But the truth of the matter is it allows us to do what we love, which is the bead weaving. So you just got to come to terms with it. So let me make it a little bit easier and show you how to do a half-hitch knot, which is a very effective knot to use when you are adding new thread and ending off your old thread. So let's take a look at what I've got going on here. I've got this little piece of peyote stitch that I did. This half-hitch knot will work with basically any project that you are doing. So it doesn't have to be peyote stitch. It could be herringbone stitch. It could be, an unnamed stitch. I have some things that are just basically unnamed stitches. Any piece of beadwork that you've done with your needle and thread, you've got threads in between each one of these beads, and it doesn't even matter where, but every single one of these beads has threads that are holding the beads together, right? So there's a thread that's attached between these two, and attached between these two, and attached between these two. So wherever you're coming out with your thread, there's already going to be a thread somewhere really nearby, right there in that intersection, that is already an established thread. So right there, what I did is I just hooked my needle underneath the thread that's holding these two beads together. And so that's all I'm going to do to start out this half-hitch knot, is wherever you're coming out, look for the nearest thread intersection right there and just hook your needle underneath those threads. And it's really, you can tell that even close up, you can barely see the thread. This is really going to be more of a just knowing that it's there and feeling with your needle. And now, like as I'm pulling upward on this needle, there's a thread there that's holding my needle down. That's how I know I got underneath those threads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down, my working thread down, so that I've got a little bit of loop left. I haven't pulled it all the way through. I've just got this little bit of loop left. And what you want to do is make sure that this is a small loop. The bigger this loop is, and it can be a lot of people will do this, and I did this a lot at first. Instinctual, just to pull it so that you can see the loop, and then just pass your needle through the loop. But the bigger your loop is, the more likely you are to have a premature knot on you. So what you want to do is go ahead and make that a nice small loop, then take your needle and thread and pass it through the loop. And it does not matter whether you go front to back or back to front, whatever, just doesn't make any difference. And then the other thing that I do that helps keep this from knotting prematurely is when I'm tightening it down, I'm tightening it fairly slowly. I'm making sure that it's all going to suck up right into that intersection there, so you will not see it. There we go. It all sucked right on up in there. You can't see the knot at all there, but it's there now. Let me show you what it looks like if you have a premature knotting situation. So let's say I go and hook under that thread, and I leave a big loop, and I go through the loop, and what will sometimes happen, let's see if I can force this to happen. What will sometimes happen, it's not going to do it for me, is that it will start knotting way up here with a loop still showing. That's one of the reasons why I tighten this down slowly, so that if I can see that premature knotting starting to happen, I can stop tightening really quickly. And then what you do with your needle is you just kind of wiggle that loop a little bit, try to get that knot out, and then you can start retightening again, like so. What I like to do, my rule of thumb, if I'm ending off a thread, is I like to do at least 2 half-hitch knots. So I'll do one, and then I'll move a bead or two away. I do the same thing. So I've looped under the threads. Here I am passing through the little loop of my working thread. I'm going to tighten it nice and slowly into that intersection. And then after I've tied that last knot, I still want to move my thread at least one bead away, and now I can cut that thread off. I don't want to cut it off right where the knot is. It just doesn't leave much, not much of a tail, so it would make it a little more easy for that tail to pull out of your knot. To add new thread, I would do the exact same thing. I would basically just start, let's see here, let's show you real quick. Oops, cut that. I would start, say I know that I want to be coming out of this bead in that direction, so start a couple beads away, pass through a couple of beads, doesn't matter which ones, there's no magic to this. I just want to be able to hold on to the little tail so that I don't pull it out as I'm making my knots. I know that there's threads that are right there, so I'm going to just hook under the threads that are right there. All right, pull down so I've got a little loop, back through the loop, pull down nice and tight so that it's in between the intersection. Ideally, I would have had this piece bigger so that I was farther away. Now I'm moving forward and I'm right back where I ended the old one. I'm ready to start my peyote stitch again. I do recommend that, especially as beginners, start your new thread first before you end off the old thread. That way you can make sure that your new thread is right in that same spot so that you're ready to carry on with your stitching. Because unless you have a pretty experienced eye, sometimes you can lose track of what bead your thread is supposed to be coming out of and in what direction. And so I recommend add your new one first, then you'll end up having two threads, the short one and the new long one coming out of this bead. Then switch over, end off your old thread. Something else I suggest you do is not just leave it there and just plan on ending it off later, because what's going to happen is you're going to forget whether you've done it or not. And so you're going to get to the end of your piece and you're not going to remember whether you've already ended off that thread. You're going to cut it, and then that's going to cause a weak spot in your bracelet. So take care of it all at once and get it over with, and then just keep on with your bead weaving. The other thing that I do when I'm ending and starting a new thread is I have developed a personal rule that I don't set down a project that needs to have the thread changed, because that is an excuse for me not to go back to that project. If the first thing I have to do when I sit down to work is change out a thread, I'll go find another project to work on. So I don't know if that's going to work for you or not, but just so you know, that's what I do. Half-hitch knots, not so hard to do. You can do it. Happy beading.